Welcome back to Finding Focus Talks. Today, Braden and I are continuing our Bible series, and we're actually going all the way back to Genesis. We're starting in the beginning, and we're going to take a journey through the entire Bible over the next course of however many weeks it takes, to help you guys understand how when we read our Bibles, it isn't just some foreign language, but something that we can actually learn from and understand God's character more and understand how he seeks to redeem us and how what he's looking to do here on earth and what our role in all of this is. And so today we're going to start actually in Genesis 1 in creation, and Braden's going to kind of lead us through that. And I think it's important to note before we get into that if you're a new follower of Christ, if you are not even a follower of Christ, I would tell you start in the Gospels. You should decide on who the person of Jesus is before getting into any of this stuff, because it'll help you understand all of this stuff actually way more. And I think it's important to also note that all the issues and the things that we're going to talk about here, there's a lot of theories, there's a lot of things that a lot of different scholars say, there's a lot of different perspectives. But it's important to note that these are not salvation issues. Majority of these are not salvation issues, which that basically means whether you're going to heaven or not. That comes through putting your faith in Christ. And so it's important for us to remember that we should major on the majors, and not divide over the smaller issues or theories or whatever. So if you don't agree with some of the things that we talk about today, that is okay. You're allowed to have your own opinion and interpretation, but these are the things that we landed on that we think are very helpful and help the Bible connect, and help us get a better image of understanding who God is. So let's make sure we focus on faith in Christ first, and kind of all the stuff that's stated in the Nicene Creed. And then we can get into stuff like this. So, Braden, if you want to kind of just take it from there, of like when we look at Genesis 1, what are you seeing? If you maybe want to give us a little summary of what's going on, and then some of the things that we can pull out there.
Yeah. So first off, Genesis is believed to be passed down from oral tradition down to Moses, and the oral tradition and the Jewish tradition back then was super strong, and they took it very seriously. And so Moses is believed to have written the book of Genesis. Now, something I also would like to preface is that, like what Nick was saying, there are different views on it, and I just kind of want to elaborate on some of those different just like structural views of Genesis. So first, there's a view that everything here, word for word, is true. What is written is what happened. There's another that is kind of on the lines of the Bible is like a library of books. And so it's kind of something to show us the moral character of God, what God is like, which is done in both. And then there's kind of a middle ground that I found really interesting as well, that God has the power to do all these things, but did they actually happen? So now where you take your stance in there, you can go do your own research and all your stuff on that. But I just thought those were kind of cool to point out at the start.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He didn't shape it out of something else. He created it out of nothingness, emptiness. It says in the next line, the earth was a formless and desolate emptiness, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. So it's something that God created. And so I think that is just, that one line alone is super powerful, because think of all the endless galaxies, the stars, and every little thing. He created everything. So that just shows us how big God is. So then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And that, he spoke it into existence. It's not, he formed it with his hands. He literally spoke it and it happened. And that is just so incredibly awesome. And that is day one. He separated darkness from light. Then we move on to day two. And day two was the creation of heaven. And this is really cool because it's like it said he separated the waters. And one of the cool like scientific things I found behind that is that it created like a vapor blanket, which is what allowed for, people to live for way longer than they do now because it protected them from like the pollution and the ultraviolet rays. So I thought that was really interesting and something that you can take note of. And then on day 3, he created the earth, the water, the herbs, grass, flowers, trees, and they yielded each of their own kind. So each thing was of its own kind, and there are many of them, but each very distinct thing. And when you look at how many of those, things there are, every different type of tree, every different type of plant, there has to be an intelligent creator behind that. The sheer fact that all of these things can exist and the detail behind them are just so amazing to think about. Day 4. God created the sun, the moon, and the stars. Just think about that. He created the sun, the moon, and the stars. Now, when you think about all of these things, the placement of them is so incredibly important and so incredibly detailed. So, for example, we have just the right gravitational force. We have just the right amount of distance between the stars, just the right amount of heat, like just the right amount of how big each star is. If one of those things were off, we would not be able to be on Earth right now. We would not be alive or even be able to form, let alone that. And then, kind of moving on to the next day, God created the animals of the sky and the sea. And there are a lot of interesting theories on that as well, with evolution and all those kinds of things. Again, God, and when Moses writes this, it said each of their kind. That is something that pops up a lot, the creation story. And so I think that's really important to note, just the repetition of that it's not necessarily maybe the things that evolved, but because there's an intelligent designer that created each of their own kind. When you look at like the archaeological records, nothing really changes species, and I think that's what's important to note, is that each of their own kind, and they're all similar but distinct. And I thought that was super interesting. And so moving on to the next day, which is day 6, God created the animals of the land. And then moving on from that, he created us, man. Now, the thing about this that I find really interesting is that we are of his image and likeness. And that gives us distinct characteristics that no other living creature has. And here are some of those things that I believe are passed down. 1, we possess personality, knowledge, feelings, and a will. We possess morality. We make right judgments and have a conscience. And we possess spirituality. Man is made to be in communion with God. And I think that last point especially is so true, because like in our lives we're always trying to look towards something that can be a higher power, right? Whether we believe that's the God of Christianity, the God of something else, we always have this need to want to go to a higher power. And I think that's where this comes into play, right? We have this God-sized hole in our heart and we're trying to fill it, and this is what we need to go towards too. God gave us this, I don't want to say he gave us this hole, but we have this intent, this will to go towards him, and that's because we're in his image and likeness. And I thought that was something really cool to just kind of ponder on.
Yeah.
And then from man, he gave us woman. Now, this really gets deep into, like marriage and stuff like that with Adam and Eve, how we're supposed to be in commune together, and that one is not better than the other. The man does the job of a man better than a woman can. The woman does a job that she's supposed to do better than a man can. That's kind of, they're intertwined. We all have our reasons for life, right? We were made to do God's will. And then on the seventh day, which can also be one of the most important days, is God rested, right? A lot of times we get caught up in, we're moving, and we just don't sit and rest. But even our God took a day of rest. And I think that's so cool because we get caught up in that so much. But the ability to be able to rest in the Lord and to rest in faith are just some really cool things.
Yeah.
And then I kind of want to give it off to Nick for a second, just to see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think you illuminated well. If I could simplify everything you just said, is Genesis 1 points. Obviously, it's to the creation, but it also more so reflects the creator, right? And I really like those three perspectives that you could take. You can take, basically talked about the different perspectives you can take on the scientific route of how you explain the creation or how you are supposed to interpret this. But no matter any of those, you should be pointed to that God is the creator, and that God. I was thinking about this. God defines the creation. The creator defines the creation, not the creation defines itself. We didn't get to define what a human was. We didn't get to define who we are or how we were designed. We were created. And so what's cool for us is because of our intellect and all that stuff, we get to discover different things about ourselves and our creation, all that stuff. And just the same way God is endless, as we look to discover about ourselves and other people, we were made in God's image, so that's also going to be an endless journey. And so I think when you point, I was thinking about now in the 21st century, we live and we kind of know quote unquote know everything about creation, but I'm thinking 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 years ago. Imagine being created, or imagine just being birthed on this earth, and you're looking around, and I don't think you're the one that tells the tree what it's supposed to do. The tree does what it's supposed to do because it was created. In the same way that chair that you're sitting in right now, you didn't make it and tell it what it's supposed to do. The creator did. And so in the same way that we were created to be in communion with God, I love that point. We were created to be in communion with God. God also gives us, we're like the one thing that God gives us really the choice in that, the will. And why? Because we're made in his intellect. We're made in his image, right? Probably not intellect. I don't know. Well, God is the one that gives us our knowledge, right? And so I remember I've been reading C.S. Lewis reading Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, and he's like, our capability of thinking, imagining whatever it might be, is never going to be higher than the creator, right? The creation can't outgrow the creator in this sense, especially when our creator is outside of space and time. And so I think, again, all the complex things breaks down to this. What can we learn in this passage, Genesis 1, about the creation? That it points that we have an intelligent creator that actually cares for us, that created the I loved how you highlighted the purpose and the detail of the design of if things were not made exactly how they were, we wouldn't be able to exist. And so that shows that God cares for detail. So there's a ton to learn about God's character in this passage. And I think it's really beautiful for us to dive deep into that. But I'm always going to go back to that communion with God part. Because I think if you look at the most inward desires of yourself and break them down to their fullest actual desire, like for example, we desire to have deep intimacy with other people, with the opposite gender, right? Well, what does that actually break down to? We want to be in direct communion with something. We want to be in direct communion, and that points just back to the garden, right, of Adam and Eve. It also points back to we were made for something, right? Other desires, in our lives, the desire of pride even is really it creates a lot of sin, but it tries to elevate yourself. But you wouldn't be able to elevate yourself if you didn't know there was something higher than you. And so I think it's really interesting when we look at like the direct communion of God. I think if everyone genuinely, from an unbiased perspective, takes a second to look at their inmost desires and try and trace it back to like what is it actually saying about my soul and myself, I think it really does point to what you said, Braden, of we are made to be in communion with God. And so the reason why so many people have that depression, anxiety, and all of these problems nowadays is because they're trying to fill it up with other things other than God, false gods, really. And it leaves them longing for more. It leaves them feeling more broken and hopeless than before. And so I've been there, and I know you've been there as well. Most people have been there. And to the person right now that's like, well, I'm pretty happy and I've never, I don't really follow God. Okay, let's see how long that lasts, because we know we live in a world that is fallen and broken and is going to present struggles and questions that you can't answer. And I think it's also important to the person that's sitting there thinking of like, well, I do follow God. I do have that direct communion with God, but I still struggle with that hole in my heart a little bit. I still struggle with the depression, anxiety. Know that God is healing you through that process. 4 years ago, for me, I struggled with anxiety more than anyone I knew. And now 4 years later, it's not really a problem for me, right? And so that's the process of God working through me. As I drew closer to him, he renewed me. And so, again, that all goes back to, if I'm looking to understand myself more, who understands the creation better than the creator? And so that's where my mind went with all that. I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Braden.
Yeah, I do. I like that you mentioned the character of God, because something I forgot to mention was that after every time he made something in creation, he said it was good. And after he made humanity, he said it was very good. So we were created for good. The world was created for good. And I think that's just really highlights the character of God, that he himself is good. And I think that's really important to highlight.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. But yeah, I other than that, I think you crushed it. I think there's a ton. Genesis 1 is just there's so much you can learn for, and hopefully for anyone listening, maybe you're new to the Bible, or maybe you're trying to have a deeper understanding. Hopefully you're walking away from this episode understanding that there's so much that you can pull from just one passage, from just one chapter, from just one even verse, and that actually, if we had more time, we would be able to really connect, and we already have. We've connected a timeless truth that was written 2,000 years ago, plus that, to our lives today. And that truth actually connects throughout the Bible. And so, to me, I feel like that's why it's so helpful for us to read the Bible and hold it to such a importance in our lives.
Yeah. And one couple more quick things to add is the very first thing that God did when he made humanity was he blessed them. Just sit and let that sink in. The first thing he did was he blessed them. And I think that's so important because he does bless us throughout all of our lives. But sometimes we may not feel that blessing, but it will happen eventually. We will have that moment of realization or whatnot. For me, that was a couple years ago. For Nick, that was 4 years ago. It's going to hit us all in different parts of our life because he meets us where we're at. And that's something I wanted to add. And then, like Nick was saying, there's so much information packed into Genesis 1, and we just were touching the surface of it. If you want to go deeper into it, a source I would recommend is a commentary by David Guzik, the Blue Letter Bible of Genesis chapter 1. Especially if you're interested in the scientific side of it, because there are so many interesting things in there that you can really dive deeper on. And as we're going throughout this Bible series, do your own research as well, right? Don't just rely on us every week to get your word in. Don't just rely on whatever source that is. You have to go out and do it yourself. That's what we're trying to empower you guys to do, is go out and do it, right? We can provide you with information, especially if you need help with a certain chapter, or you're confused or something like that. That's kind of what this is to help you understand it and to help you figure out how to do it yourself. those are just kind of a few things I wanted to leave with.
Yeah. So other than that, if you have any questions for us, or maybe um, any perspectives that you find in Genesis 1, leave them in the comments, shoot us a DM on Instagram, whatever it might be. But other than that, I guess we'll see you next week.